Hi everyone, and welcome to How to Resize a Digital Photograph in Photoshop CS5. Okay, so let's get started. Open up your file in Photoshop. And once you've done that, you want to head up to Image, click on that, and click on Image Size. And that will open up the Image Size dialog box. You'll see at the top in this section here, you have your pixel dimensions, so the width and the height of your image, as well as the current file size. So this one is 5.5 megabytes. Down here on the bottom, we have our document size, so we can see what our width and our height is in inches, or you have other options here as well as our current resolution. Resolution is linked to the quality of your image. The higher the PPI, the better your image quality will be because your file will have a higher concentration of information. Having said that, there's not an exact rule for what you should set your resolution at because it really depends on the reason you are resizing your image in the first place. Optimal resolution for web, for example, if you want to post your file on a website or an online gallery, your optimal resolution here is 72 ppi. That's your screen resolution. However, if you wanted to make a print of this same photograph, your optimal resolution would ideally fall in the range of 180 to 360 ppi. This number will always vary depending on the reason you're resizing your image. So let's get started. The first thing I want to do when I'm resizing any image is uncheck this resample image box here down at the bottom. That way, as I size my image up or down, you can see my resolution changes proportionately. So that way I'm not changing anything about my file as I resize. And this is very important, especially when you're sizing up. Say I wanted to make a bigger print of this photograph. Let's say a 20 by 26.5 here. So when I size that up, I can now see that my resolution at 60 ppi is much too low for that optimal range of 180 to 360, which is our desired printable resolution. So this tells me I have two choices. I could make a smaller print, so let's just bring this down. Or I can change my resolution. So I've brought it down a little bit, 11 by 14, but I can see that my resolution is still out of that printable range of 180 to 360 ppi. So here's what we can do. We want to recheck this resample image. Now you'll see once I recheck this resample image box, it will allow me to change this to anything I like without affecting my width and height. Now, you have to be very, very careful when you're resampling your image. Resampling is also called interpolating. The higher I make this number, the more information Photoshop will dump into my photograph in order to make it a bigger file. Now, a common mistake that beginners make is they think, well, if I make this a high resolution, my image will look better. But the more information, the more pixels you ask Photoshop to dump into a file, the worse the image actually looks. So let's do an example here. Say I wanted to make this amazing photograph, a high resolution of 600 ppi. Let's see what that does. So now you can see that my image looks quite pixelated, looks much softer. All the crisp edges are softened here, and I can see some digital pixelation happening. I mean, if we think about what our original resolution was 100 ppi, and now we've upped this resolution, we've interpolated up to 600 ppi, so that's 6 times the actual resolution of my image, and we can see how that affects the quality. Let's step back here. Here's my actual resolution of my original file at 100%. You can see how nice and crisp it is. The detail in the hedge, the crisp lines in the shingles and the fence. We don't want to compromise that in our print. So let's go back to our image size. We'll go back to our 11 by 14 example. When I'm resampling, rather than set this number to a high resolution, even to the 360 resolution, would be tripling the actual resolution of my image. The best practice is to aim for the lowest possible optimal resolution for printing, which is 180. So let's do that. So now you see I'm not even doubling my actual resolution, and that's still adding a lot, but when we click OK, you can see my results are much better than they were at a higher resolution. Again, let's step back for a second. Imagine we're back to our original here and we need to size down. Sizing down is not as problematic as sizing up is because, again, we're going to uncheck this resample image button. Generally for web use, you want about an 8x10 image at your screen resolution. That way, we ensure that our image loads up quickly on most websites. Most people can easily access it. So I can see my resolution is a bit too high. To drop this extra resolution and set my optimal screen resolution, which again is 72 ppi, again I rechecked that resample image box and reset the resolution. Note though that Photoshop will discard this extra resolution and you won't be able to get it back. So always, if you're making your file smaller, save it as a separate file, just in case you need to go back to your larger file, say in the future, if you want to make a print. A couple more things before we finish. First, always keep this constrained proportions box checked. Otherwise, it will stretch or compress your image. If you want to make this, for example, an exact 8x10 instead of 10.7, you should use the crop tool, and we'll go over that in a later tutorial. Finally, as you resize and resample your images, you have some options here. For example, bicubic, best for smooth gradients, you may use that in the case of a sunset, for example, where you have a smooth transition from one color to the next. You could try bicubic smoother for enlarging or bicubic sharper for reducing. You can try out these options in your own work. And that's it. Thanks very much for watching, everybody.